This episode is brought to you by TherapyNotes, TherapyNotes.com, and also Money Matters and Private Practice course. And you can check that out at practiceoftherapy.com/moneymatters. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 173 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer. Glad you've made it. Glad you're with me for this episode of the podcast, and hope you're having a good week or weekend whenever you might be listening to this. I think spring is finally in full force here in East Tennessee. I know that the pollen is in the air, but anyway, I was able to get out in the yard and do some work this week, and looking forward to getting out and actually tilling my garden. And so that was an exciting part of my life, but it's been a good week for me, and then I've gotten to reconnect with some folks, and now that just kind of feeling a little less of the pressure of COVID now that I've been fully vaccinated, and a lot of my friends and colleagues and stuff that I normally meet with and get together with have also been vaccinated. So it was great to get out. I got to get together yesterday with my good friend, Dr. David Hall, and we went to lunch. And so we were just talking about that and the fact that we had not had lunch together probably in it's been well over a year, because might have even been 2019 when we were actually in person together. We meet fairly regularly, but anyway, we were working on some upcoming things that are coming out, and looking forward to you hearing about that. I've got another webinar coming up that it's going to be a webinar that will be kind of an evergreen webinar, a free webinar that will talk with you about starting a group practice. So keep your eyes and ears out for that, and you'll be hearing more about that. Also, this past week I got together with my mastermind group. I've got two. Let me explain this here. I've got the focus group that I lead, and we're winding down for this year. We started back in January, and we're getting ready to close things out, but it's been a great group of folks, and folks that are in private practice and at different various stages within their practice, but a lot of them are solo practitioners, and they are really trying to figure out how to get more organized. And so we worked on a lot of those things in the focus group. And so if you're interested in ever joining with a focus group with me, you can do that by just going over to practiceoftherapy.com/focus group. And there'll be an application you can complete there. We can start the conversation. Haven't set the date for the next one yet, but I'm anticipating that it'll probably be maybe in May or June sometime that we'll start another focus group. And the other thing I was going to say is that I'm part of a mastermind group that we recently started with several other consultants in this private practice consulting space. And boy, I enjoy them. We got together yesterday via Zoom, and a big shout out to those folks. Jessica and Whitney and Uriah, and you're going to get to hear from them on the podcast here before long, hopefully. So, but anyway, great group of folks. And so it's just great to reconnect with people and be able to get back out there. And I hope you're able to do some of the same. I know we're not quite out of the woods with the COVID pandemic, but it's just good to reconnect with folks. The other thing is I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest today, Danielle Hayden, and she is she's not a therapist, but she's an accountant, and I always like having people from outside necessarily our profession to give other perspectives on what it means to run a small small business. My good friend Julie Harris and I, who's also an accountant, had teamed up a few years ago to create the Money Matters in Private Practice course, which is still available, and it really teaches the whole financial side of private practice. And it's there as a resource for you. And for the month of April, I've got a discount going, a sale, if you will. I really hope I don't sound too cheesy, but I'm just saying it like it is. I've got the Money Matters in Private Practice course on sale for the month of April, and you can get that if you'll go to practiceoftherapy.com/moneymatters. And if you'll use the promo code just April 2021, you can get 20% off that course. And so it's been a pretty popular course for a lot of people and has been very helpful in teaching people the financial side of private practice. It's not something we learn in graduate school. There's very little business instruction or financial instruction. I know when I went through, there was none. But anyway, it's important stuff if you're going to be in private practice, and it's the number one reason that private practices fail is that they are not prepared for it financially. And so this course is designed to teach you all of that. Again, you can find out more about the course and look at the curriculum and all of that sort of thing by just going to practiceoftherapy.com/money matters and check that out. And be sure and use the coupon code just April 2021. And also I mentioned real quickly about that. It was when you go to that page, there's a freebie there for you that you can download a free financial analysis guide, which will give you a starting point at really looking at what you need to run your practice and really thinking about your numbers. And that's exactly what Danielle and I talk about today in this particular episode, is the importance of knowing your numbers, particularly for small businesses and, as she puts it, entrepreneurial kind of people, which, like it or not, if you're in private practice, you're an entrepreneur to some degree. Some folks might not like that term, but I'm okay with it. But anyway, looking forward to you hearing from Danielle here in a minute. But before we get to Danielle, I'd like to invite you to go over and check out our sponsor for the podcast, TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. They are the leading electronic health records system for those of us in private practice, particularly in the mental health space. And I'll say this. I've been doing a lot of work within TherapyNotes this past week. We've onboarded a new therapist with my practice, and I'm just really blown away with all the features that are there and all that it does for us within our practice, from filing insurance claims to being able to send appointment reminders to also giving people a patient portal where they can go in and look at schedules and schedule appointments online. Also, there's a telehealth feature where you can actually meet with clients securely for telehealth sessions within the TherapyNotes platform. So be sure and check them out, therapynotes.com. And if you'll use the promo code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get 2 months of their services at no cost to you. So it's really a win-win situation. You can try them out for 2 months and see what you think. But I think you're going to like them. So be sure and check them out, therapynotes.com. And so now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Danielle Hayden. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm so happy for you to get to know Danielle Hayden. And Danielle, welcome to the podcast.
Gordon, thank you so much for having me be here. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Yes, me too. I know one of the things that you're passionate about that I'm also passionate about, and that is the importance of therapy practices or people in private practice of knowing their numbers and really knowing how to navigate the whole business side of being in practice, because I think if you don't know that, you're going to struggle a good bit. But as I start with everyone, Danielle, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself and how you've kind of landed where you've landed?
Yeah, I am, like most entrepreneurs, have a very jagged, wild roller coaster story. I actually started off my career as a hairdresser, so very different than accounting. But I think that I always like to mention that because it reminds us to give ourselves permission to change and ebb and flow throughout our life, and as we make different decisions. And it's part of our story into entrepreneurship. So I had went to college for accounting. I went towards a career helping business owners with knowing their numbers. So when you go to accounting, you can go a few different routes. You can become a tax accountant. We hear that term all the time. We can become an auditor, where you go and audit big companies. But I knew in my heart that what I really wanted to do was make a difference for people, like average people like you and I, right? Not the big investors, not the big corporations, right? I wanted to make a difference. I'm a Midwestern girl. I still live about 5 miles from my parents and 10 miles from my brother. And I wanted to make an impact to the people, the common people who are working their tails off, starting businesses and putting their heart and soul into their business. And so I went into business accounting. I did work with the investors and the board of directors for the first several years. And let me tell you, I learned a lot. I learned so much about what the CEOs and the investors and what they were all looking for. But the reason that's so important is because now I can take all that expertise and all that information and I can bring it to entrepreneurship. And so, we were briefly talking about this right before we hit record, that, when you start your private practice, you're really passionate about helping people, right? You want to be a therapist, and you forget that you have to do all of the other business stuff that comes along with it. And we hear it from all kinds of entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. I'm passionate about this. Now all of a sudden I have to know accounting. Mm-hmm. But we know that it's so important to have a successful practice is to know your numbers and then be able to use that information to make business decisions. So totally long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's great. And I think, one of the things that I think for a lot of us in this particular field, we learn a lot of stuff the hard way. And one of the things that I think is kind of a misnomer for a lot of people going into private practice is they think, I'll just be easy. I'll just hang up my shingle and people will come to me and they'll pay me and that'll be, make lots of money. But they really don't understand the intricacies of running a small business and the importance of knowing their numbers. And I think one of the things that I have learned from people and just conversations around the country is just, they're not really sure what it means to look at their numbers and know their numbers. You want to talk a little bit about that, of what when we say know your numbers, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. You hear all these kind of taglines, especially in this world of social media and all the gurus out there. And I think one of them that you hear all the time is this: know your numbers. And I get it. As a business owner, you're thinking, what the hell? What numbers do I even need to know? Uh-huh. And honestly, we could spend a whole hour on this one question, but I'm just going to stay high level with you. When we say know your numbers, I want you to understand your financial statements. And I know a lot of people are a big fan of profit first. And so you can have a combination of knowing your numbers and the profit first allocation, as well as understanding your profit and loss statement and how you can prepare for tax season. And that means making smart business decisions all year long so that you are maximizing your tax deductions, right? Making sure that we manage how much we're going to pay in taxes at the end of the year, making sure that we're structured in the right way so that we're paying ourselves as business owners, making sure that we're investing enough money in the business, but not too much money, right? There's a balance between paying yourself and investing in your business. And so when I say know your numbers, I want you to understand the profit and loss statement, and then be able to take all of that information and have it match your higher level goals, such as I want to be taking home X amount in to my family, or I want to invest X amount into the business. I want to hire X amount of people. I want to meet X sales goals. And so this is the first step in all of those other financial decisions.
Right. You got to kind of know your starting point. Yeah. Yeah. So when you're working with people around that, what is the starting place for getting to know your numbers better and kind of getting your head around all of this?
Yes. So usually when we have business owners who own their own private practice therapy office, the first thing that we do is make sure that we have an accounting software set up. So you'll always have your client management software, and then you'll have an accounting software. And, we hear it all the time. Look, I've been in business for a few years. I just started my business. I've been in business 10 years. It doesn't matter where you are. I haven't set up a system yet, or I set it up and I never updated it, or I'm doing it and I don't know if I'm doing it right. Right? We hear business owners of all spectrums. So I say that because if you're listening to this thinking, oh my God, I set up a QuickBooks file years ago, I have no idea if I'm doing it right, or I never set it up and I've been in business for years, just know you're not alone, right? You're not alone. There's so many other people in practice that are right where you're at. So give yourself some grace. So when we work with a client, we figure out where they're at, right? Do we have a QuickBooks file yet? If not, let's get you in an accounting software. And it's really important for long-term decision-making and tax management. So once we get you into that accounting software, I like to go backwards before we can go forward. So usually what we do is what we call, air quoting, catch up. So when we do that catch up process, it is taking all of your historical transactions. So all the money that you made and all the expenses that you had, all the places you spent money, and pulling all of that data into your accounting software. Now we have a starting point. Now we can start at go. Playing Monopoly. Now we can start at go. We can make the next round around the board, and that is our way of saying, okay, now I can look at what I did. How much money did I bring in? Where did I spend money? Does this surprise me? Right? What went well? What didn't go well? So that's the starting point. Now we can start to look forward.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the things that I know I've heard in talking with other people when they're trying to get their head around things. You really do need to have the right tools in place. I think some people, you could do it simply by having just a spreadsheet or whatever, particularly if you're just getting started into private practice before you. But I think you really do need to have some sort of software and a way to capture everything so that you can get the reports and the numbers and look at them. And I think kind of the gold standard is QuickBooks. Are there other softwares that you recommend?
Of course. So I still love QuickBooks. I'm still going to recommend everyone use QuickBooks. When we work with clients, we love QuickBooks so much that we include it in our costs. So that's how much we still love QuickBooks. There are other systems out there. Xero is another very popular one. It is very easy to use as well. Wave is another one. It is a free software. It has some limitations. So each software has some limitations. I like to suggest to business owners to plan for where you want to be. And what that means is eventually you're going to outgrow a system like Wave because you are going to want more reporting. The more, as you get a little reporting and then you get a little bit more reporting, you're like, oh, I like getting this data. Wow, this makes making decisions a lot easier. I don't have to make an emotional decision. I can make a data-driven decision. And like, oh, what other report does this system have? And a lot of these other systems, they don't have all the reports that QuickBooks has. And so that's why we suggest that people go into QuickBooks, because we know that it can grow with you. It can grow with your practice, and you will never run out of reports that you want to run. Look, if you're just starting out, open yourself a business checking account, keep your business and your personal separate, take a Google Doc or an Excel spreadsheet. Yes, start where you're at, and then you can build into the more sophisticated software. I do caution people away from using, like, there's FreshBooks and a few other like invoicing type softwares that came into the market as an invoicing software and then turned to an accounting software. Like, I think GoDaddy has one, FreshBooks has one. They definitely run into some limitations. So I always tell people I do caution away from them.
Right. Yeah. So when thinking about looking at your numbers, how often should people be doing that and staying on top of that?
Yeah. So when we work with clients, we always give 3 options. We have a weekly, monthly, or quarterly. And so weekly is your premium, right? That is, if you are able to be in tune with your financials on a weekly basis, that is the gold standard, right? And that might just mean a weekly dashboard of what are my cash balances? Do I have any collection issues or client issues? Who am I going to owe money to, right? Do I have any contractors or rent or credit card payments coming up? And then what are my sales month to date? So those are the types of things I want you to look at on a weekly basis. Then we have kind of our monthly. This is if weekly feels too big and too bold, I love for clients to look at their financials monthly. When you do this, you can see what just happened, right? What was your sales for the previous month? For the year to date, I love looking at year to date, compare that to prior year, right? If we did that catch up, now we have prior year information. So now we get to look at what do we do this year compared to last year, which is a super fun exercise. Get to look at where we spent money, and then if we have a profit or a loss. And then once we have that information, we can also know how much do I need to set aside for taxes. And when you look at this on a monthly basis, you can make super quick decisions, right? It becomes, wow, I spent a lot of money on that and I'm getting nothing from it. I need to cancel that software, or I need to cancel that advertising campaign, or I need to fire that contractor, whatever it might be. You don't let a lot of time go by without making that quick business decision.
Right.
If that feels like too much, right? There's still people who say, oh, money's hard, right? And I get it. So there's people who say, I can't bring myself to look at my report card on a monthly basis. I'm going to wait till the end of the quarter. And so that's the bare minimum. If you're not looking at it monthly, I want you to at least look at it on a quarterly basis. At least 4 times per year, you're able to say, do I need to save for taxes? The same, other thoughts that we talked about with the monthly package about what's working, not working. But those 4 times per year, I want you to really think about, am I making a profit or loss? And do I need to change any of my spending habits to minimize or maximize my profit and loss for tax season? So that's another thing to make sure you're doing on a quarterly basis. Right.
Yeah, I know one of the things that I'm a big proponent of, and really to talk with people in regard to their numbers when they're first getting started, is really focusing on building a reserve for themselves You know, particularly for things like taxes. Also, you know, with the way therapy practices go, we can go through a period of slow times, and you know, and also being able to build into that, you know, all of us want to have some vacation time and that sort of thing. And as a business owner, you know, if you're not particularly in our field, you know, if we're not working or seeing patients or clients, then we're not getting any income. And so you need to, you need to plan for those things. What sort of recommendations would you have about, you know, building a reserve?
Yeah, I love that you're talking about this, because this is one of the things that can go into knowing your numbers, right? So when you know your numbers and when you have your financials in front of you, you can start to look at how much do I need in a reserve, right? What does that even look like? Because a lot of people will say, save 3 to 6 months of expenses. Well, great. What's that number, right? How do I even get to that number? And so when we work with clients to look at that number, we'll go back in those historical financials. So you'll hear me say over and over again about the historicals, because your numbers are trying to tell you a story. It's your job to read the story. And so as a business owner, you got to look backwards, right? So let's look back over the last, I like to go 6 to 12 months to find trends. And I say 12 because when you look at the last 12, you'll remember little things. Oh, I forgot that I have that giant subscription coming up in the month of May, right? And that cost me $5,000 a year to keep that license or that subscription, whatever it might be. So I want you to go all the way back and look at the last 12 months. You can run some averages. What's your average rent cost, your average utilities cost, what's your average subscription cost? If you have anybody working for you, what are your average contractor costs? Now we have a monthly average of operating expenses. Now, I know that number might feel daunting. You don't have to save that number tomorrow, right? You don't have to save that number next month. You just slowly have to get there, right? So you can slowly transfer money over to a savings account that is your rainy day operating fund or your vacation fund, as you mentioned, and start moving that money over there so that you can build 3 to 6 months worth of savings. And you mentioned one other thing that I just want to hit on is knowing your slow times, right? When you can look backwards in the last 12 months of your financials, it's really important to note those slow months, right? Do you experience a dip in the summer months? So a lot of the practices that we work with have a dip in summer and around holidays. And so knowing that dip, do you take intentional breaks? As a business owner, I know I'm going to be slow during that time. Do I take my vacation at that time to maximize that? Do I consider that a CEO retreat and go work on my numbers and my CEO planning during that time? But again, going back to looking at those trends and saving for that time period and start slowly building and working towards it.
Right. Yeah, that's and another thing I would add to that, Danielle, is particularly for practices that are maybe insurance based, where they're getting being reimbursed for their services by insurance companies, is understanding what your average income or your average rate is per client, because that can vary a good bit. And I think that the thing that, too, I love is just being able to work from averages, because I think that is kind of what we see in this particular field is that we don't necessarily get exactly the same thing from each client. It can vary a good bit. And I love too what you said about going back and looking at when are the times in which you've got greater expenses. I mean, just because I can think of several things like you mentioned, licensure, self-employment taxes. That's a whole other topic there.
That's another one.
And all of those things. So yeah, so being able to know when those things hit and being able to track that. So yeah, so you want to, speaking of self-employment taxes, what you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and we could do a whole nother podcast on this too. One thing that we're working with a lot of our practices who are growing and growing quickly this year. This has been a wild ride for people in general, and we have a major mental health crisis here, and I think it's causing a huge amount of growth that we've seen in our clients who have therapy practices. It is really important to watch your growth and to decide how you're paying yourself and how you're going to continue to pay yourself. So let's look backwards in your historical financials again. If you are structured as an LLC and you are taking owner's draws today, that means you're just a cash expense of your business, and you are not able to actually be a tax deduction of your business. What that means is that you will pay self-employment tax on that profit or loss on your profit and loss statement, right? On your income statement. And that's what you're going to pay self-employment tax on. If that number is getting close to 50,000, it's time to really start to think about an SCorps. And maybe it's only 35,000, but you grew fast last year and you know you're growing this year. It's really time to start thinking about moving yourself to an SCorps, putting yourself on payroll. Once you put yourself on payroll, you can become a business expense to your business. You will reduce the amount of profit. You reduce the amount of self-employment tax that you pay in your business. You become a W-2 employee of your business as well. So there is some tax payments that you make, but we see the tax benefits outweigh that. And so work with your tax accountant, work with your bookkeeper, make sure you're having these conversations and look and knowing your numbers, right? And when you know your numbers and when you look at that information, you can have that conversation with them. Or, if you haven't had this conversation, you're paying yourself as an LLC, this is your reminder to go and look at it and make sure you're structured right for the next year, so that we can maximize how much money you're taking home in your pocket.
Right. That is such great advice, because I know that one of the things that people, I think, is really kind of surprising to them, and I've known a few people along the way where they have really gotten this huge tax bill at the end of the year. And it's because they really weren't aware of the difference between being self-employed versus being employed by somebody. And that whole decision around becoming an SCorp is one that I would recommend you talk to a professional about that, because there's a lot of different ways to look at that and understand that. I know that's been a conversation I've had with my accountant on several occasions about when do I, currently I'm not an SCorp, but we're looking at, okay, is this the year that we need to make that change? And, with the change in administration politically and all of that sort of thing, the tax laws change. And so you've got to kind of look at the pros and cons of all of those things. Yeah,
definitely be weighing that out. Definitely be talking to your bookkeepers and your tax accountants about it. And it's a big decision, but the biggest thing is to make sure that, if you're looking at those numbers, if you're looking at that profit and loss statement on a monthly or quarterly basis, you won't be hit with that surprise at the end of the end of the year. That's part of what we send our clients is, hey, make sure you're saving this, right? This is how much we estimate that you're going to owe in taxes. And that's important, guys. Taxes can be such a stressful pain point for people that we tend to just avoid it. And it really needs to be something that we just tackle head on. My mom always said, there's two things that we that are for sure in life, that you're going to die and pay taxes. So it's a given. So let's approach it and save for it and be prepared for it. That way we're not angry and we don't, you can start to get resentful of your business if you are surprised with this tax bill every year, right? That can become a point of contention for you. And I want this to be a place of passion. You're passionate about what you do, and I want it to stay that way.
Right. Well, I know that there is so much we could talk about around this topic of knowing your numbers, but I know I want to be respectful of your time, Danielle, but I know also you've got some resources available for people. You want to tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, come download our financial goal setting worksheet. This is a great way to start a lot of the things that we talked about. And it can be a launching board for you. I always tell people you got to start small, right? You don't go run a marathon after you sign up for the 5K. It takes weeks and months to get there. So go download the financial goal setting worksheet. It's a great place to get started. Don't let this be analysis paralysis for you. We have the resources there for you to make this more doable and not so overwhelming.
Okay. Yeah. And we'll have links in the show summary and show notes for Danielle's resources. You want to mention how they can get in touch with you and your website and all?
Yes. Come to profitplannerbookkeeping.com. You can see all those resources there. If you're curious about how we work with other private practice owners, you can come book a discovery call. I actually hold every single discovery call on my own, so there's no high pressure sales tactics. You will talk to me directly, and my passion is hearing about your business. And so come talk to me. I'd love to learn more about you. So you can book a discovery at profitplannerbookkeeping.com or come hang out on social media. It's Danielle Hayden _OH. I am from Ohio. And come drop some questions in the comments. We spend a lot of time and energy putting out really helpful tips and tricks for business owners. And so if you have questions on this topic, come check out the information, come comment there, and we're here to be a resource for you.
All right. And again, we'll have those links in the show summary and show notes. Well, Danielle, I'm so glad we connected. I think this is such an important topic. And I know as we're recording this, we're only a month away from the tax deadline here in the United States. So it's kind of I know I'm sure it's a busy time of year for you as an accountant. So, but yeah, thanks again for being on here, and hopefully we'll be able to connect again. Well, folks, I hope this has given you a lot to think about, and hopefully maybe ease some of the angst that people have about looking at their numbers and understanding the financial side of their practice. I'm grateful to Danielle for being on the podcast and really giving her perspective, as an accountant and bookkeeper, and really kind of knowing that. And one of the things I will say is that part of your team and one of the first people you should be talking to when you go into private practice is an accountant or somebody that has some expertise in taxes, because I've heard so many stories of people that go into private practice, not only private practice, but other small businesses, and because they don't know that financial side, they can get themselves in a lot of trouble with being hit with a big tax bill because they aren't aware of the self-employment side of things and being able to pay those quarterly estimated taxes and all of that. And so it's an important piece. I know even for me, even though kind of a story here is that a year or two ago, I got hit with a really big tax bill. And fortunately, I was prepared for that because I had had saved the money and had that financial buffer for myself. But still, it was painful to let go of that money. But anyway, you got to be prepared, and it was just one of those things that kind of fell through the cracks. I will say I ended up changing accountants because of that. But anyway, it's something to be prepared for. So be sure and check out Danielle's resources and that free guide that she has. And again, there will be links here in the show notes and the show summary for that. And speaking of finances, be sure and check out the Money Matters and Private Practice course for the month of April. You can get it for 20% off if you just use the promo code April 2021. And you can get to that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/money matters. And be sure and check that out. The feedback I've gotten from people that it's been very helpful for them. And it's it goes into a lot of depth around the financial side of private practice, of understanding your profit and loss statements, understanding self-employment tax, being able to understand, if you get the premium version, how to set up payroll and all of those kinds of things if you're moving into group practice. But also there's a whole module in there on Profit First, which I'm a big fan of. And that's Mike Michalowicz's book, Profit First, which I think every small business owner, every private practice owner needs to read that book. So anyway, check it out, practiceoftherapy.com/money matters. Use the promo code April 2021 and get it for 20% off. And also, as always, thanks to our sponsor for the podcast, TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. They are the leading electronic health record system for private practices in the mental health space. They're who I use in my practice. They've got a platform that will absolutely be a time saver for you, but also keep you organized in your practice, from filing insurance claims if you're insurance based, to sending appointment reminders, collecting payments from clients. All of those things are in one place at therapynotes.com. And you be sure and use the promo code Gordon, just GORDON, and you can get 2 months of their services for free, and you can try them out. So check them out, therapynotes.com. Well, that's it for this episode. That's a wrap, as we like to say. I'm glad you joined me for the podcast. I hope you're having, as I said at the very beginning, hope you're having a good week or weekend. Be sure and take time to subscribe to the podcast, and also mention it to your friends that might get some help out of this. And as I said, I've got a lot of great guests planned coming up, and hope that you'll join me again next week. Stay safe and healthy out there too. I know we're not quite out of this pandemic stuff, but I can see hope coming. So anyway, take care, folks. Thanks again for joining me, and we'll be talking to you next week. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.